Jim Kunkel here. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and set the notification bell to all so that you won't miss any of my new content. Welcome to another episode from the Carboline Technical Series. Today I'll be interviewing Doug Sinitiere, who's Carboline's market manager for the oil and gas industry. And our topic today will be oil and gas industry market trends. I hope you find this episode very informative. Hey, Doug, I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you today.
Yeah, Jim, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Before we would start our discussion, could you go through your background and also cover your roles and responsibility at Carboline?
Sure. So I've been in the industry for about 17 years. Affectionately, I tell people when they don't know what I do or what I'm involved in, I tell them I've been fighting the war on corrosion for about 17 years. So started on the fabrication side and then ended up on the manufacturing side. Did that for just about 14 years. Most of it was here in Houston, where I'm at now. I spent 2.5 years up in Alberta, up in the oil sands and part of Western Canada. Then came back to Houston. I joined a service contractor for a few years, so I saw that side of the business. It was a great experience. Met a lot of great people. And then since the end of October, I've been with Carboline as the global market manager for oil and gas. And in that role, it's a few different things. One of it's strategic, just looking at the overall oil and gas strategy and helping execute that. There's a technical component, looking at the technology that's in the industry and where we might have gaps and where the industry's moving to. And then certainly a customer-facing element, engaging from all the way up and down the contract chain. So
I really appreciate the you providing today information related to the current trends related to oil and gas market. It's very important for coating contractors and also for other providers to the industries to make sure that they do take these trends into consideration related to business planning and internal changes that they might need to do. So we rolled out of 2019 into 2020. We had a global downturn in the oil industry, and then we went directly into a global pandemic with a lot of lockdowns and business disruption and changes. So, in what ways has the oil and gas industry, been in transition, at the beginning and through now? What type of transition's going on?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think like many industries, the pandemic has forced transition for a lot of industries, not just oil and gas. But, one thing in particular that every industry has been impacted with, and certainly oil and gas, is on the HSE side. If you look at construction job sites now, there's pandemic coordinators where you would have never heard of that or never thought about having that a couple of years ago. So that's one thing. I think the other thing you see from a health and safety perspective is companies are actively engaging and giving guidance to employees on what they can do at home and outside of work, just to address the big concerns. So, those are real big things that have been happening. The other thing that we've seen, and it's obvious, but this idea of strict capital discipline. I think there's a shifting landscape, and there has been for some time in terms of especially on these large projects and getting them commercially available. But, you're starting to see that tighten up a bit. Companies are really looking at how they're looking at projects from feed all the way to the end. And certainly there's a focus on being as disciplined as they can and spending money wisely, because a lot of these oil and gas majors are public companies. They got to provide value to their shareholders. So I think that's been in focus for a while, but certainly like a lot of other things during the pandemic, it certainly accelerated that. And then, another thing to think about is just individual transition. A lot of us weren't familiar with doing WebEx, doing virtual training, virtual meetings, especially those of us that are on the business development and sales side, and conducting business in a very different way. So that's certainly been another big impact that we've seen from a high level. And I think we're going to continue to see that.
From the perspective of the coatings contractor, Midsummer had the opportunity to be a moderator of an industry event related to the impact, obviously, of the downturn, but also to the major impact related to COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of the contractors that were on the panel that I did moderate, and a lot of the participants to the webinar, were talking about changes that they had to do, like you had mentioned about the coordinator when it comes to the pandemic coordinator, changes that they had to do quickly to be able to work on site at petrochemical or pipeline work where there might be, in a facility and everything like that. But the other bigger impact that they had was related to the testing, where you would have to have tests done daily. And then if someone tested positive, they had to confirm the test again. And then if it was a positive, it would impact the crew. The owner would have obviously some issues related to having a crew on site to be able to do work. Have you had feedback from contractors that you come in work with, or sometimes come in contact with, that have had similar type of issues?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you look at even crew sizes. I think typically you look at especially the larger projects, there's an assumption that you're going to have a certain type of crew size, and that had to be evaluated. Where they were being, where and how they were working. How does the lunchroom set up? Who can travel in vehicles together, and how many, and what does that look like? So there's a lot of ancillary things, related to that had to kind of evolve as the pandemic grew and as more guidance and regulation were in place. So, yeah, I think some of those things are fundamentally going to change as you look forward into how to staff projects. What can you do remotely that you didn't before, and certainly the criticality of some of those things. So it's definitely highlighted a different way about doing business.
So, the oil and gas industry, it's always a boom and then a bust and a boom and a bust. It's a cycle that repeats on and over again. This time it was different because of the impact of the pandemic. And there's been a stronger push now to transition oil and gas companies into more energy-based organizations, focused on, wind, solar, geothermal, and other types of energy production. Could you go into a little bit about the aspect of this transition that's really kind of coming quickly on these companies?
Yeah, you bet. Well, I think you look at it a couple different ways, but one interesting thing is you see traditional oil and gas companies, they refer to themselves now as energy companies. They're, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these companies are public and they have to meet their shareholder requirements. So looking at these different areas and ways to transition and diversify. I think it's been happening for a while, but certainly right now it certainly picked up some steam, if you will. There's certain areas that come to mind. Carbon capture has been around a while, but you're starting to see more involvement on that. Certainly in the renewables area, all the way across the board. Renewable diesel is a big thing right now. A lot of the midstream companies are involved in that aspect of it. So certainly a transition happening, and part of this is driven by public pressure as well. I think consumers in general want to have a responsible supply chain. They want an industry that's good stewards, and so some of these things drive that. Another thing you'll see, Jim, is a lot of discussion around ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Look at all the year-end reports that'll be coming out. Everybody's got a plan. They've got a way to address, a more carbon neutral type of environment. So I think these things are just continuing to expand and, continue to grow for sure. The other big impact that you look just in general is the workforce. I mean, you look at a lot of folks that are seasoned and are entering into retirement or moving out of the way. So there's a big knowledge gap right now, and certainly that's true in the world I'm in coatings. But I think you see it all the way across the board, and there's no quick fix. There's no simple answer. I think companies have a lot of initiatives and they're doing different things to address that. But one thing that I would say is for somebody that's newer in our industry or looking to get into it, the opportunities are plentiful. I think there are some good programs and development out there for people that want to have a long-term career. There's mentorship opportunities and things like that. But certainly this real hands-on knowledge gap is there, and it's something everybody's addressing. Not only that, and certainly attracting new people into the industry in general. So one way I look at it, like I said, it's a bright spot if you're new and up and coming in the industry. You can have a long runway here and do some neat things.
So the last great global pandemic was over 100 years ago. We're going currently through. We don't know when the end of this current pandemic is going to be, but after that last great pandemic, there were major changes to social changes, industry changes, and things like that. The oil industry has been going through, and the gas industry has been going through a lot of consolidation, but this pandemic could accelerate that. What do you foresee related to mergers and acquisitions?
Yeah, that's a good point and a good question. I think you're going to see a lot of different things. I mean, we go back 10 years, and in fact, I look back to try just in the last 5 years, looking at owner operator, EPC, applicator, and coating companies, just to try to understand how many of these mergers and acquisitions have happened. And to be honest, there were so many, it was hard to keep up and count. So it's happening a lot. Some of them have been planned, companies with strategic capabilities aligned. So I think there's a design element to that where companies, especially on the service contractor side and EPC side, are looking on how they can combine and add value. But to your point earlier too, it's part of it is fiscal related. I mean, some companies that were already in trouble and maybe leveraged or just had their investments in the wrong spot, so to speak, out of default, they're having to look at these mergers and acquisitions. So, and I think there's be some good things that come out of that. I mean, we've seen some of these that are good, but as you know, it's anytime you do that, you're combining people, so there's also a challenge there. And so I think the folks that'll win in that game are the people that can really come together, integrate the cultures of these companies, and really have a clear path forward. But certainly because of the financial downturn, I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening. On the EPC side, for example, the bigger these projects get and the more they stay in a lump sum scenario, it's just tougher to more risk on the contractors and is that a sustainable model? So there's some people right now saying that it has to change, somewhere. You can't commoditize everything. So it's very interesting. And, even down to the manufacturing level, where I'm at, I think you're going to continue to see that again for the same points I brought up earlier. Some of it by design, you see a good fit, and some of it just, it's been a tough go, and there's not, in some areas, there's not full light at the end of the tunnel. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I definitely agree with you on that. Change is good, but change can be challenging. And the big aspect for the industry is how it adapts to change. We've seen major changes in lots of different industries. So I view this more as an evolutionary step. And it's good to see that, Carboline, through you, you're being very in tune with the market changes that are coming and to be able to adapt. We talked about a lot about related to, the impact of, the downturn, the pandemic, and also changes that are going on. Doug, is there anything that we did not cover that you'd want to leave with the viewers?
Yeah, I just think it's the changes we've seen in corporate and in business. I mean, it's personal as well. We're all having to look at different ways of doing things, different ways of working. Some of us managing work and home life in a lot different perspective. So yeah, I think Miles Monroe says change is the only thing that's common and the only thing that's certain. So I think just recognizing that for us as individuals and certainly corporately, and understanding that that's going to continue to happen is going to help us all adapt and really look forward to good innovation and some good new things that come out of these changes that happen, certainly with the pandemic.
Well, Doug, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. Good talking to you.
Hey, have a great day.
You too.
I hope you found this episode to be very informative. Please make sure to like the episode and also share it with your other colleagues. If you're not a subscriber of my YouTube channel, it's real easy. All you need is a Gmail or a Google account and hit the subscription button. Make sure to set the notification bell to all so that you won't miss any new content. Thank you very much and have a great day. So, Joe, for the lay person who's watching this episode who might only think that corrosion engineering is related to, metal corrosion, as an overview, what else does corrosion engineering relate to?